The NFL season is officially over. With the Super Bowl having just been played, let's do a recap of the 2024-25 NFL playoffs game by game and rank them on a tier list. Let's kick things off with the first game of the playoffs, with the Texans hosting the Chargers. The Chargers jumped out to an early 6-0 lead, but once the Texans broke through, they didn't look back.
Herbert, pump, throw, intercepted! Eric Murray, touchdown, Texans!
The Texans completely dominated. Overall, this was a boring way to kick off the playoffs, so this one belongs in D tier. Up next, the Ravens hosted the Steelers in a forgettable contest that never really felt like the Steelers had a chance. Now, they did have 2 touchdowns in the third quarter, but honestly those drives were built upon crazy deep bombs and weren't a sustainable model for success. The difference in rushing yards between these two teams was staggering. For entertainment value, this one lands in D tier. The following day, the Bills hosted the Broncos in a game that many people expected to be a blowout, but that's not what happened at first. Denver got out to an early lead, and after a slow first half, they doinked a field goal as the second quarter expired. The Broncos ended up trailing by just 3 points at half, but this is where the clear difference in these teams became more apparent. Buffalo dominated the second half and never looked back, going on to a commanding 31-7 victory. Denver produced a whopping 58 yards in the second half. Once again, we got another D-tier wildcard game. So far, the playoffs had been a total snooze fest. The following game was the Packers at the Eagles, which started about as badly as things could for Green Bay.
Decked up, and before the third, I think the ball came out there. Who's going to come out of it? Eagles say they have it.
The Eagles immediately scored a touchdown, and then the Packers went 3 and out, and from that moment, the game felt like a mess. The Packers couldn't get out of their own way with turnovers galore, and they missed a field goal. But the Eagles failed to make them pay, only coming away with a field goal for the rest of the first half, alongside multiple 3 and outs. Finally, in the third quarter, these teams gave us some fireworks.
Got him. Who runs over his man, still at his feet, and he scores!
Then, Green Bay answered on the back of Josh Jacobs' monster run to the goal line. And after Philly pushed the lead to 9, Green Bay failed to make anything happen at that point. Overall, this game was a defensive slugfest that had a sparkle of a moment in the second half, but was still not very entertaining for most of it. This was better than the previous 3 games, but it still only lands in C tier. Up next, the Bucs hosted the Commanders in a game that revived all NFL fans who had been desperate for a good game. The Bucs struck first with a field goal. Then after a deep bomb to McLaurin, Washington was stuffed on 4th down. But a few drives later, in a nearly identical situation, Washington converted a 4th down and then scored a touchdown. Then after the Commanders started controlling the game, Baker led a clutch drive to end the first half. Just look at how close this ball was to being tipped by the DB.
To Evans for the touchdown!
The tension between these two teams remained through the second half, with the Bucs taking back the lead. Then came a huge 4th and goal for the Commanders.
Daniels, end zone, incomplete, no flag!
But despite getting a stop, Baker immediately fumbled, and Washington took back the lead. After the Bucs went down and tied the game, we officially had our first playoff matchup of the season that came down to the wire. Jaden Daniels, who had a few minutes on the clock to go and win the game, did just that. After making a series of plays that got him down the field, he made one of the great plays of his rookie season, evading a tackle and setting up the game-winning field goal, which doinked off the upright. This game had me on the edge of my seat. I'm not a fan of either of these teams, but for the back and forths, the constant tension, and Jaden Daniels balling out, this one lands in A tier. For the final wildcard game, the Rams hosted the Vikings in a game that felt like Sam Darnold's make-or-break moment. Was he going to be able to bounce back after a rough game versus the Lions? The answer was no. He looked rattled and nobody could block for him. The Rams took control from the get-go and never looked back. And after Jared Verse stormed his way to a scoop and score, this one felt like it was over from an emotional standpoint. The Rams continued to deliver the punishment. The game ended with a commanding 27-9 victory for LA. This game proved the importance of veteran leadership and playoff experience. It was more frustrating than anything watching the meltdown of the Vikings offense after how successful they had been. This was impressive for LA, but for entertainment's sake, this one lands in D tier. Moving on to the divisional round, the Chiefs hosted the Texans in a game no one expected Houston to win. After going back and forth with some field goals, it became apparent early that Houston was going to have a hard time blocking for CJ Stroud. Then after Kelsey broke off a long catch and run where he looked like the slowest player in the NFL, the Chiefs scored a touchdown. And at this point, it felt like KC was going to control this game, but Houston didn't back down. First they got a field goal, then put together a monster 10-minute drive in the second half to bring the game within 1, but they missed the extra point. The Chiefs immediately responded with their own 13-play drive that extended their lead to 8 and took the game into the final quarter. Although it is worth mentioning that they got a BS 15-yard penalty during that drive. After this, the Chiefs defense controlled the rest of the game, sacking Stroud on multiple occasions. And after getting a field goal to extend the game to a 2-score lead, the Chiefs blocked a field goal, thus officially ending this game. Houston honestly held their own for a while, but KC was too much for them to handle in the end. This wasn't the greatest game in the world, but at least it was still within a score for most of the game. I put it in B tier. Later that day, the Lions hosted the Commanders in what turned into a shootout. This felt like a college game. There was huge plays constantly. Here were some of the hype moments. After some back and forth, St. Brown made a huge catch on a deep bomb that led to that sick one-handed catch by Laporta in the end zone.
Trouble throw. Oh! He caught it! Touchdown, Laporta!
Moments later, Scary Terry took a quick screen to the house. Then Goff threw a disastrous pick 6 where he got absolutely blasted. Then, while Goff was being tended to, the Lions ran a reverse in his absence and Jameson Williams took it to the house.
Williams, punch back! Jameson Williams is gone!
Then Jaden Daniels threw a bomb to Brown that set up a touchdown. And finally, Goff threw a pick in the end zone. Just before halftime, there was more crazy plays in the first half of this game than the first 4 wildcard games combined. And it was shocking too because the Commanders, who were huge underdogs, were up by 10. The Lions kept fighting and brought it back to within 3, but Jaden Daniels was too damn good that day, along with the fact that the Lions defense was clearly undermanned due to injuries. And after a brutal interception on a trick play, Jaden Daniels led a touchdown drive that included a ballsy 4th down conversion that ended up being the final blow.
Cross, got it, McLaurin banged around and inside the 5 and another 4th down conversion.
With over 1,000 yards combined, all the explosive plays, and the greatest rookie performance ever in the playoffs, this one lands in A tier. That's because it was at least a double-digit game for most of the 4th quarter. Next up, the Eagles hosted the Rams in what turned into a bloodbath. Immediately, there were fireworks, with Jalen Hurts busting off the longest run of his career. Then they missed the extra point. The Rams immediately responded with a touchdown of their own, and later in the first, Saquon did what he had done all season.
No run out of it. Big opening, Barkley. There he goes. Barkley gonna ring the bell again. Touchdown, Philadelphia.
By this point, you could tell that the snow was just starting to pick up, and by the start of the second half, it was a completely different playing surface. The Rams clawed their way back to a tie game midway through the 3rd quarter. Then, on the ensuing drive, Jake Elliott took back the lead for the Eagles. Then,
Patriots back to pass, pressure in the end zone. That's a safety.
But immediately, something bad happened to the Rams.
Aaron Williams lost the football. It's loose. The Eagles have it. It's into the hands of Isaiah Rodgers. First and goal, Philly at the 10.
After a costly false start on the goal line, the Eagles settled for a field goal. And by this point, man, what a turn of events with the weather. The snow was clearly affecting the play on the field. Everybody except for Jake Elliott, apparently. Oh, and Saquon.
Adding to it. There goes Barkley. Into the clear. Through the snow. All the way home. He's hit another home run against the Rams. And this one might send them to the championship game.
This touchdown run immediately became the most iconic moment of the playoffs and probably the entire season so far. But what's crazy is this didn't even seal the game. First, Jake Elliott missed a PAT in classic fashion, and then with less than 5 minutes to go, the Rams drove down and scored a touchdown, and the Eagles immediately punted. All of a sudden, the Rams were about to win this game. On 3rd and 2, from inside the 15-yard line, it felt inevitable. Matt Stafford was about to break every Eagles fan's hearts. But luckily for them, Jalen Carter exists.
Stafford in trouble. He's sacked.
One play later, they sealed the game. This is easily one of the most iconic games of the season, and one of the most memorable games that I can recall. For the changes in weather, the back and forth, the Saquon breakoff touchdown runs, and the near comeback, this one lands in S tier. For the final divisional round game of the playoffs, and easily the most hyped one pregame, the Ravens hosted the Bills. It was the matchup everyone wanted. Lamar versus Josh Allen. Who was going to prevail? Also, this game had snow early, which was the perfect segue from the previous game. The two superstar quarterbacks both immediately led touchdown drives to kick things off. Then, early in the second quarter, Lamar Jackson made the first crucial mistake of the game.
As Jackson wrapped up, the ball's out. Scooped up, Von Miller, and the Bills defense has the second takeaway.
Following this, the Bills scored a touchdown. Lamar responded with a bomb to Bateman, but ultimately they were stuffed and settled for 3. The Bills made a statement on their next drive running the ball and took a commanding 11-point lead going into halftime. But the Ravens started getting back to their bread and butter in the second half, running the ball with Derrick Henry. First they got a field goal, and then Henry punched in a touchdown, but they failed the 2-point conversion. The Ravens defense held the Bills to a field goal, which gave Lamar and the offense a chance to go take the lead in the fourth quarter. But unfortunately, Mark Andrews made a crucial mistake.
Wide open, it's Andrews. They dropped the ball, and it's recovered by Bernard.
When the Ravens needed it most, they got another critical stop on the goal line. And this is where we saw Lamar come alive. He made multiple spectacular plays, including a touchdown throw with 1:33 to go to bring the game within 2 points. It all came down to this 2-point conversion.
Roll, flip it, got it. Oh, the ball was dropped. He had the 2-point conversion in his hands. Andrews did not hold on.
Overall, this game gave us everything we could have hoped for. It came down to the wire. Both star quarterbacks made big plays. The Ravens' turnovers, mistakes, and not getting the ball to Henry more were the ultimate killers for them in the end. Overall, this one goes in A tier. Now, we move on to championship weekend. The first matchup featured the Eagles hosting the Commanders. The Eagles came in heavily favored, and for good reason. And early on, Saquon set the tone early.
Gets it, Saquon Barkley, first down, Barkley, oh! Saquon, touchdown!
From that point, things became clear. The Commanders were going to have to fight for every inch, while the Eagles were pretty much going to have their way. The Commanders threw the kitchen sink at them. From fourth down conversions to fake punts, and after McLaurin's touchdown, it brought the game to within 2. But that was as close as it got. After a ballsy fourth down call, where Hurts connected with A.J. Brown, this eventually led to a touchdown. Then the Commanders coughed up the ball on the kickoff, which led to a 27-15 halftime score. From that point, Philly began to crush them. The second half proved the difference in these two teams. Washington was a fun story, but Philly was a serious Super Bowl contender. Overall, the game was fun for the first half, but didn't feel like much of a contest in the second half. Dominant performance by Philly, but for entertainment's sake, this one lands in D tier. Moving over to the AFC, we got yet another installment of the Bills and the Chiefs. Could Josh Allen finally defeat Mahomes and overcome his playoff woes? The game was thrilling right off the bat. The Chiefs stormed out to a 7-3 lead, but then Mahomes made a big mistake.
And again, the ball's on the ground. And Mahomes tries to fight back to get it. It may end up in the hands, it does, of the Bills.
This led to Buffalo taking their first lead of the game. But Mahomes is just too damn good. They went and took the lead right back, forced a punt, and after a big return, Mahomes threw up a prayer that was caught by Worthy that set up another touchdown. And then the Bills scored right before halftime with a sick touchdown catch by Hollins.
And it is caught! Hollins able to hold on!
But they failed the 2-point conversion. To start the second half, the Bills got a big stop and orchestrated a huge drive running the ball, which included a fourth down conversion, which then set up a massive 4th and goal that the Bills elected to go for. After another stop, the Bills had a chance to really start to control this game, but they failed a tush push on 4th down in Kansas City territory. Well, that's up for debate. Then Mahomes took over again, and after a while, you're not stopping Mahomes.
Mahomes still has it. To the 5, and in for
touchdown!
Once again, the Bills found themselves in another 4th and goal scenario. After that, Mahomes led a drive where they scored, but just 3 points. And with just over 3 minutes left, Josh Allen had the moment he had been waiting for. A real chance to go and beat the Chiefs. After a few first downs, the Bills found themselves in a 4th and 5 with 2 minutes to go.
He just desperately throws it up in the air, incomplete!
This game was all you could ask for as a fan. It went back and forth. Both teams made big plays when it mattered. Is it an all-time memorable game? I don't know about that, but I really enjoyed it, so I'm gonna put it in A tier. Finally, we have Super Bowl 59, the rematch from 2 years ago. Rather quickly on, the Eagles set the tone. They got a touchdown on their second drive, and their defense absolutely dominated from the get-go. The Chiefs had 3 straight punts, and then down 10, Mahomes threw that brutal interception.
Intercepted! Picked up by Cooper DeJean! Gets a block! DeJean is in! Touchdown!
After another Mahomes interception, the Eagles scored a touchdown, making it 24-0. You never feel like a game is over with Mahomes playing from behind, but after getting strip sacked late in the third, yeah, this one was over. Utter domination by Philly, especially their defensive line. Too bad this game wasn't all that entertaining, unless you just love seeing the Chiefs get destroyed. I put this one in D tier. Honestly, you could probably put it in F tier. But for the Eagles, pretty cool to see them get their revenge from 2 years ago. Shout out Jalen Hurts for getting that Super Bowl MVP.
It makes a huge play. Now the Eagles get it back. We're going to run some clock, or maybe throw the dagger. Hurts going deep for it all.